all and every one of you for coming to this, the first of our events of HAB for 2013. And thank you particularly for coming in on such a ghastly day, cold day, bitter day. However, we're going to be warmed up by our colleague Lisa McKenzie, who is going to talk to us about the unintended consequences of the global universities on local community. I should say that Lisa is here. Lisa works with us in the school on a research project to do with European lifelong learning, but she has a much more varied, if I can put it that way, personal history as somebody who was until the summer, a Leverhulme Fellow, was that it? Something very impressive anyway, in the Department of Sociology, where she was looking at, well, she'll tell you what she was looking at, so you'll explain all that.
I'm going to explain all that.
Yeah, okay. So she has a background as a graduate of Nottingham and got a PhD at Nottingham, but she also has a background as an Access student who came to Nottingham as a mature student, and many interesting things about that. And she's Nottingham bred, if not born. Were you born and bred in Nottingham?
Shire. Yes, I'm from Mansfield. So, yeah, I am. But I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken away from you. No. Forgive me. Please, everybody else can eat their sandwich too.
Yeah. Well, I thought today what I would do is, because I've been ill, I'm going to be really honest. I've not wrote a proper paper. But I think what I wanted to do today is almost like introduce myself to the school, introduce my research interests, and also probably ask for a bit of advice from colleagues in the School of Education. And I thought I would do that by introducing you to my research interests, which has been sort of a long time coming over in sociology, and then ask you how you feel that I could sort of continue that work over here in education. Like John said, I'm from Nottingham. I'm sort of born and bred in Nottingham, and up until 12 years ago, I did various jobs in shops and factories until I came to the University of Nottingham through Access. And since I've been here, I've absolutely, and I think this is important to the rest of my presentation today, as a working class woman living on a council estate in Nottingham, I suppose that I found enlightenment by coming to university and being in higher education. And I think if we just sort of hold on to that, you know, my own personal experience, which I do use because I think it's important to try and explain the importance of higher education. So I'm going to start there. But what I have been thinking of for a long time really is my local community. And I think that's probably where most working class students start with. So today I'm going to talk to you about the unintended consequences of two global universities onto their communities. So I will start, if I can. I suppose we're all knowledgeable about this sort of rankings of the university, rather than sort of rankings about what universities are doing within higher education or within education. We're now seeing these sort of Times rankings of global universities. Where do we sit in the global? And I think this is becoming very normalised now in higher education, that the global is becoming much more important. We need to attract students from all over the world, and the rankings of where we are becomes more and more important. And I think there'll be more of you in here who know more about this argument than I do, because I focus on the local community. So I just want you to start to think about really maybe the University of Nottingham, and how once upon a time as many people have told me, that the University of Nottingham used to be much more embedded within the local community of Nottingham than it is today. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to come into the School of Education, just because of the history, the long history that the School of Education has had with the local community. From colleagues that I've spoken to within the School of Education, I've learned that actually over the last, I think, 10 years, the relationship has been breaking down slowly. And then with the closure of Shakespeare Street, adult education and the relationship with the community is almost broken down now. And what I've just put up here is just some of the, when I googled the global university, this is the sorts of things that came up. UCL came up quite a lot, and actually so did the University of Nottingham. And most universities now, as I was sort of researching and finding out how universities want to see themselves, are using this word global and sort of saying that we are increasing our global awareness, we're increasing our global brand. And so if you Google the global university, you get almost most universities in the UK saying something about that. And then I think this is an interesting move as well. The University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, China and Malaysia. And as I think you all know now, this is our logo and it's everywhere. The University of Nottingham isn't the University of Nottingham anymore. It's also the University of China and Malaysia. And this is our brand. And although I don't think, I'm not sort of here to critique what we do in China and Malaysia, because what I'm here to do today is really to think about the University of Nottingham and the relationship that these global universities have with the local communities. So the local effect. So this is where I suppose I tell you about my route into, or my route here into the School of Education actually. So if we think about the global university and the impact that we are supposed to be making on the global and our relationships that we've got all over the world and the relationships that we have with overseas students, I think we also have to think about the local effect and the way that these global universities, the impact they have onto their local communities, or even if they know that there is a local community. My route into higher education, or into the School of Education actually, as I said, came through an access course here in Nottingham. And I found myself on an access course, actually a social work course, access to social work. And like many working class women, I'd got to a point in my life where I'd worked in factories, I'd worked in shops, I'd got children, and I knew I wanted to do something more, I wanted to learn. And actually knowledge and education became more important to me as I suppose my children became older. And so I started to look around for what I could do in the local area, because I was a local woman. I wasn't thinking globally, I wasn't thinking even nationally. I was thinking, where could I get to on the bus and sort of engage in this thirst for knowledge that I'd got. So I went down to the local connection centre and I did this sort of online test, and the online test said that I would be a good social worker. So, like many working class women, I thought, well, that's actually a good thing because it's vocational and I'll get a job. And it's really important when you're a working class woman that you actually understand and you see where this education is going to go. You can't do it just for fun, or you can't do it because you're interested, or this is not what education you see it as. You see it as something that's going to get you somewhere. It's going to get you a job. It's going to get you in a better position than where you are today. So I enrolled on the access course for social work at Basford Hall College. I don't know if any of you know that, but actually that and again, this is something else that I'm sort of moaning a bit today, but the access course to social work actually has been finished at Basford Hall College. So, and actually the all access placements in Nottingham now has been slashed by about 40%. So on top of the sort of the slashing of the EMA, and also the slashing of funding in further education. This really worries me about where people like me are going to actually go now, and I'm going to talk more about that. But so I found myself on this access course, and I applied for Trent University, but can I just say that I didn't actually know until the Christmas of that year that I could go to university. I didn't realise that an access course actually allowed you to go to university. I was just going there because I thought that it would be something that could sort of get me back into education, and also it could sort of meet my goal to becoming a social worker. I was never sure how you did that, actually. But then I found out that you could go to university, which I was really shocked about. And I applied for Nottingham Trent University to go on their social work course. We didn't have a social work course here at Nottingham then. And we had a visit from somebody from the sociology department, and they started to talk. One of the lecturers from the sociology school here at the University of Nottingham started to talk about this piece of research here, Poverty, the Forgotten Englishman, the Ken Coates and Bill Silburn research that was done in the 1960s. This is a piece of research which I know that some of you here will know all about, and actually you're probably really proud of this research because it came from the School of Education. It came from the School of Adult Education. For those of you who don't know anything about it, I'll go through it because I'm very proud of this piece of research as well. There was an adult education class on Shakespeare Street. So for those of you who remember Shakespeare Street, it was a learning centre really that was part of the University of Nottingham and based in the city centre. So it's very accessible. It had a great local library. And before I was even a student here at the University of Nottingham, I could go in there. It also didn't have the restrictions then that we have here now. Local people could actually just wander in. So this piece of research came out of an adult education class in the 1960s on Shakespeare Street. And Bill Silburn and the late Ken Coates, who sadly died last year, was teaching a group of adults from Nottingham, local students. And it was about the time when Peter Townsend's study about poverty in the UK came out. And Peter Townsend was sort of arguing that poverty in the UK had not been eradicated. And although this was sort of the mid-60s and the swinging 60s, and apparently we'd never had it so good at that point, wages were going up, people had got more disposable cash, people could have started to afford to buy cars. And there was a general understanding that because of the welfare state and because of full employment for men, that actually poverty had been eradicated as well. But Peter Townsend was one of the lone voices at the time who was arguing that actually it hadn't, and there was extreme pockets of poverty all over the UK. Now, Coates and Silburn, Bill Silburn and Ken Coates was talking to their class about this. And the people of Nottingham said, well, yeah, we know where, you know, there are places in Nottingham, actually, that poverty is rife. So they decided to do this study. And they didn't have any resources, not really, but they decided to take the class across the road to a neighbourhood in Nottingham called St Anne's, which is actually where I live now. I still live there. And they wandered around St Anne's for a couple of years with a questionnaire, and they were talking to people in St Anne's, and they came up with this study, Poverty, the Forgotten Englishman. And what they found was the people who lived in St Anne's were hard-working people. They were full employment.
That's got nothing to do with you. I was just
all right, okay.
Told you.
There was full employment, but actually the housing was 90% of the housing was unfit for human habitation. This is what they found, that 90% of the housing in St Anne's in 1965 had got no indoor bathrooms, no indoor toilets, and there was open Victorian drains running down the backs of the old houses. Sometimes houses were rat infested and damp, and actually the health problems in the neighbourhood was running at sort of 10 times the national average. Infant mortality was 5 times the national average, and they'd found this just literally across the road from where they were studying. So this book and this study, it had a massive impact at the time. And actually there were questions asked in Parliament about this book and the research that Coates and Silburn did. And it wasn't as a consequence of this, but it was on the back of this that many sort of social changes, it was an important book and an important study that was affecting social change at the time. And the neighbourhood of St Anne's was knocked down in 1970, and it was actually rebuilt as the council estate that I'm going to talk about today, where I live. But it was this study, and when I found out about this study, that is why I came to the University of Nottingham. For no other reason. I'm a local Nottingham woman, but I didn't know anything about this university. And in fact, when I came for my interview here as an undergraduate, it was the first time I'd ever visited the campus. I'd never been on this campus before. So I had no understanding really of the differences between the University of Nottingham and Trent University. I just knew that this study was done here, and actually I wanted to come and do something like this. I thought, wow, you know, this is where I live, and actually people are interested in this, and I want to do something like this. And that was the only reason why I came here to the University of Nottingham. And so the local effect, so this local study had a massive impact on my life. And I think that although I'm just one person, I think, you know, I am one person that came into higher education because of something that was done in the local community. I also thought I would put up the Saturday night, Sunday morning effect as well here in Nottingham. And I know that recently there's been a series of seminars about Raleigh, which is with the School of Education has been part of. And we've also got the Saturday night, Sunday morning exhibition on at the Lakeside. So for those of you who have not been and visited that yet, it's a really great exhibition about Nottingham life, working class Nottingham life in the 1950s and 60s. And this local effect, I think this is where the local people of Nottingham know, they know about the University of Nottingham. And it's this sort of local effect, what we've done here, but actually it's many years ago. So when I've sort of Googled the University of Nottingham, these are the sorts of images that come up. And this is the sort of images that the University of Nottingham is promoting about Nottingham. You know, the castle, the gate entrance to the castle, and the beautiful campus. And what I've done is thought about this as Nottingham in the light. So when we're sort of advertising through higher education, Nottingham, these are the images that we have. This is the images that we're selling. Nottingham is a great city, it's a multicultural city, it's got lots of historical interests. And this is what I find is advertised about Nottingham by the university. However, this is my Nottingham. This is the Nottingham where I live. And this is the Nottingham that the University of Nottingham very rarely engages with, and actually our students very rarely engage with. This is St Anne's where I live. This is the school, and this is why I'm showing you these pictures in particular. This is the Sycamore School, and as you can see there are metal bars all the way around it. The estate in St Anne's where I live today is full of metal bars and gates for all different reasons. This view here of the bars, that is the view from the playground. That's the view from of the city that you get as a child in St Anne's. If you can see the city in the background, and you can see the Victoria Centre flats. So as a child in St Anne's, or as a child in one of the poorer neighbourhoods in Nottingham, this is your view. This is what you know of Nottingham, and it's not this. Now I don't want to be too sort of negative and say that the University of Nottingham or the Global University is absolutely to blame for this, but what I'm saying to you is I think that we need to think about our responsibility to this. If we are, as a global university, we are sort of using Nottingham in this way, I think that we have to do something about Nottingham in this way. The reason I'm showing you this is because it's a school. It's a place of education, and I think we are also a place of education. And I think we have to have some solidarity with this place of education, which is just 2 miles away actually. So what have I been doing over the last 8 years? Well, I'll tell you actually what I've been doing. I did my undergraduate degree quite successfully, and then I got a 1+3 ESRC grant to do my master's degree and then my PhD. I focused my PhD in St Anne's in Nottingham because it's where I lived, and I wanted to know what was happening in my neighbourhood. And I also had this great respect for this piece of research that Coates and Silburn had done, and I really wanted to bring it back to life again. I was really disappointed actually when I came to the University of Nottingham, and that piece of research actually 10 years ago or 11 years ago when I came here had been lost really. It wasn't being used. And I think more recently it has, because it's actually becoming more important again. So for 5 years while I was doing my PhD, or for 4 years, I was focused on white mothers with mixed race children in St Anne's. And then, as John said, that I won a Leverhulme Fellowship for a further 2 years, where I continued restudying Coates and Silburn's study in St Anne's, but this time I focused just on men. And there was a reason why I focused just on men actually, and it was because while I was doing my PhD research, when I was talking to people about the research, people were saying to me, well, where are the men? And it was an interesting question actually, because I'd not thought about where the men were. It was kind of normal for them not to be there, and the reason I've not written about them and the reason I was not researching them is because they wasn't there, and they were also in the shadows. And I found over the 2 years of the Leverhulme Fellowship where they were, which I can discuss on another time actually, but they were in the gym actually. So I found the missing men in the end, and I focused my research for 2 years on the missing men. The reason they were missing is just because they live a parallel life to women on the estate. They're not in the community centres where the women are, they're not in the co-op, well the co-op's closed down now, but they're not in the housing offices, they're not in the schools, they're actually somewhere else. But I can do that another day. So what has this got to do with the global university, and what do we have to think about? Like I said, what I don't want to do is be really negative and say, you know, the University of Nottingham has caused this social inequality, or the global university has caused this social inequality, because I don't believe that. But I do believe that we have to start asking, as a institute, or what I believe is a public good, what we are doing within our local community. And although we seem to have sort of removed ourselves or pulled out from the local, and actually we've engaged in the global, I think we need to still come back to the local. So I've started to think about shifting space, and this is where I suppose I would ask you as colleagues in the School of Education to sort of help me out. Is my work has always been based in the community, and I'm really interested in how and it's a sociological research, you know, how do I stay in the School of Education, continue the work that I've done, but also sort of follow in the footsteps of the School of Education of sort of 20 years ago. How do I bring that back? And I suppose that's what I'm asking today, is, you know, sort of support and help and interest really. Is there interest that, you know, is this where we want to go? Is there colleagues that would like to sort of go back into the local communities? So I've started to think about shifting space, and I've done this really through my own research. But it's the way that space is beginning to move within contemporary society actually, and how space is sort of closing in. And this is where I've started to think about the global versus the local. The global university, or I'm focusing now on the University of Nottingham, our students here have very little connection. And I think it's probably a little bit different actually here in the School of Education. But actually wider in the university, the students have very little connection with the local. They very rarely move out of the space of the university, which is the university campuses, the neighbourhoods where they live. But also they've got sort of shifted space within the city centre as well. The the students here at the University of Nottingham, I've sort of been speaking to them over 5 years about this, because this is something that I'm also interested in how we get students and the local community to also interact. And they tell me that they don't go out at night in the city centre when local people are there. They particularly stay away. So they only engage really with the city when it's student nights or if it's something put on for them. They wouldn't go into the city centre at night on a Friday or a Saturday night because they say it's locals night. Some of our students wouldn't even go to the student nights that are mixed, because I don't know if you know this, but we have University of Nottingham student nights in different pubs, and we have the Trent University nights, and sometimes they don't mix either. So actually the space in Nottingham has been carved up through time as well as space. The locals, as some of you will know who's been here for a long time, have some resentments towards the university, and also a lot of misunderstanding as well. People where I live, they don't actually know what I do, and people often ask me, actually, what does your local community think about you at the university? Well, actually they don't know, and I think my saving grace is that I'm still allowed to be part of my community, is actually they don't know what happens in here, and they often say to me what happens, and I've always seen it as a bit like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that they see lots and lots of people coming in, but they actually don't know what we do here. So they don't really see us leaving. And that's what they kind of say to me, what do you all do in there? And I'll just go, well, we read books and we just talk and that. And they go, sounds a bit boring. and that is really, and that's as much as they are interested. And it's actually as much as I say. So what have I found out about shifting space? What I've also found out is, well, we've got this sort of shifted space within the university. We've got shifted space outside, and I'm sure they are connected. This is where I suppose where I'm starting to think theoretically. I am sure they are connected. The local neighbourhood in St Anne's, the reason I'm showing this is because there is an absolute, one of the things I've found out is this commitment, this feeling of belonging to this local community. And these are sort of some of the ways that people show that they have a connection and a belonging to the local community. Not to really the city centre, the city of Nottingham, but to St Anne's. So this is one of my respondents. She's got SV tattooed on her arm. That means Stansville. It's kind of a local, it's people in, some of the younger people in St Anne's call St Anne's Stansville, Stanstown. And a lot of them have got tattoos which say Stans or SV or Stansville. The lad with the t-shirt on, they also make their own t-shirts. We've got a shop that prints our own t-shirts as well, and they're all about St Anne's and about belonging to St Anne's. And the lad with the t-shirt on, that actually is St Anne's. If you can see the Victoria Centre flats in the background. And then in the corner there's a gun. Again, it's representation. It's the way that they feel this neighbourhood is represented. But this is not just with young people. This is what I found right across all people in St Anne's, because I interviewed men, women, but also I worked with a group of elderly people who lived in it's not a gated community, but it's like the bungalows in St Anne's. And one of the things that when you ask people in St Anne's is you say, tell me something about yourself. And their first response is always, I'm typical St Anne's. They describe themselves as St Anne's. So St Anne's becomes a place where you live, but it's also an identity as well. And the space that they occupy is becoming smaller and smaller. And this is where I suppose my journey is important, because I've made this journey, which is only 2 miles and only actually a bus ride away to the University of Nottingham, but actually symbolically it's a massive journey, and I think that symbolic journey is often overlooked. The University of Nottingham, it's probably easier for a student to come over, and I'm going to say that, I'll say this, you can challenge me about it, it's probably easier for some students to come over from China than it is for a student to come from St Anne's, and that is something that I have that I would stand by. So, who else don't I like? I don't like the UCL either. I don't know if any of you know anything about this story. There's I've got he's not a friend, he's a colleague really, Paul Watt, and he works at Birkbeck in London, and he's been working with a group of residents in Newham on a particular council estate that the UCL has got their eye on. They're not interested in the council estate, they're actually interested in the land. And I don't know if you kind of know this, but the UCL also, if you Google global university, the UCL also makes a big play about being a global university, and it's very important that they are global. And they want this piece of land, and the Labour councillors have actually sold it them, they've let them have it. Now this piece of land is the Carpenter's estate in Newham, and they've got to move out in order to make way for progress. And the progress is that there will be a new campus particularly aimed at the global, it will be their global campus. So they're actually going to call it the global campus, and it is to attract global students. And unfortunately this council estate, the Carpenter's estate, is going to be demolished. And I thought what I would do is show you the... No, I forgot how I told me how to do this.
You've got it there.
I've got it there. Can I do it from there?
Yes, yeah, should be able.
There is a petition. That you know, if anybody wants to sort of sign it, I'd be happy that you do that. But they've made a short film. It's only a minute long, so he said he'd set it up for me, didn't they?
Probably sure.
There.
You had a community, and it was really nice then, it really was.
That's like for me. They think they're going to get me out today.
Don't think it's mad, is that you could say? But why should we have to suffer?
The breaking of a really good community, that's sad.
After all these years of being in there, we've got to get settled up in another new place.
40 years, all my children up here, I'm going nowhere.
So you're putting everything down. I don't think it's for the better, but then I'm an old lady, so what do I know?
I don't think they care anymore. Just
Why do we have to bloody move there? I get quite emotional there when I think about it, because it is a shame. I really miss it though.
So there's the petition. I'll show you what you're laughing at, John. Yeah, I mean, this is a part of London that probably most of you will know has sort of been shifted and moved around for the Olympics. But on the back of the Olympics, because now it's sort of prime real estate, that the UCL is also interested in it as well. And I've spoken to some of the residents who live on the Carpenters. I attended a public meeting. I'll get rid of that. Yeah. I attended a public meeting with Paul Watt a couple of months ago, actually, and it was well attended from local residents, and the I'm not sure, the representatives of the UCL was there, and they really couldn't understand that this was that the residents of the estate couldn't understand that this was progress, and they constantly kept saying the same thing to the residents. You know, this is progress, this will be good for you, this will be good for all of us, you know. And the residents just, there was absolutely no relation, there's no communication between the two. The representatives of the university couldn't understand why these residents still wanted to live on this awful council estate, and the residents of the council estate didn't understand why a university campus needed to be built where they lived. Yeah.
Can I ask why global university is important in these contexts?
Because I suppose that's because what the UCL is selling itself as. It's selling itself as a global university, and in order to become this global university, they need this global campus. They're actually calling it the global campus. So,
yeah, but if some other London university who are just making a campus for local, local London students were trying to get it, I mean, that would be equally as bad.
Well, yeah, but the point is it's not. It is a global. It is a global campus, and I think and that's one of the things that I really wanted to sort of talk about is, does it make a difference if the university is committing to the local? Would that make a difference? And I suppose also the argument there would be, if they were committed to the local, they would understand why to knock down the place where they live might not be the best idea. So I didn't want to sort of be all negative, although I'm going to continue to be negative actually. This is inter-university, so I suppose when we're asking, well, what can the university do? We are in times of change, and universities have changed, and because of the fees, we've marketised higher education, which is another discussion. And I believe that higher education, all education, is the public good. And I think that all the public should be entitled to that in one form or another, which is why I think that the university has a responsibility. And this is, I suppose, what they've come up with now. I don't know, do any of you know about inter-university, or have you come across it? Well, this is their second project, and it's in St Anne's in Nottingham. So they've been talking to me about it for 2 years now, and I worked with them to start with, and then I kind of gave up a bit, really, with it. It's a project that's actually funded by the Russell Group universities, and it's a mentoring scheme, and it's for children. And what they do, I think that there are quite a few of them all over London, but this is the first project that they've done outside of London, and there's going to be two. There's going to be one, I think, in Bulwell, is it Bulwell? And then there's the one in St Anne's. What they're particularly doing is they're focusing on the gifted and talented children. So they're looking for local children that they can mentor for a period of time in a learning centre after school. It's a strict curriculum that the children will follow, and the whole point is really that they are to get into red brick universities, or to get into Russell Group universities, which actually took me ages to figure that out. I didn't realise that's what they were doing. I thought it would, when they first told me about it, I thought it was going to be a fantastic opportunity for local people to go and to be able to get some education, or to be part of education. But actually they told me no, it's for children under the age of 10, and it's not for adults, and it is only for the gifted and talented children. So it's for the children that will actually could have the potential to achieve a place at a Russell Group university, because it's the Russell Group that's funding it. So I did ask them, I said, well, what about Trent University? Are they part of this? Well, apparently they're not. So this really is, it's a targeted project. I've got a few problems with this. The best thing that they did with this is they asked me where they should go. And because our local library's just closed down, I suggested that they went into the local library, which is here it is. And they actually took my advice and they went into the local library. So their learning centre is the old local library, and that has made sense actually to all of us. And it's given them a few sort of local brownie points that the library was. It was popular in St Anne's. It was a popular space and people used to like to go there. So when it closed down and it went into, we've got a new multi-centred brand new building where the library is. But people were very fond of this, so they've gone into the learning centre, into this learning centre. It's only been open 2 months, so I'm not sure yet what its impact's going to be with our local children. I'm a bit wary of it, just because when I asked them what the local involvement would be, because the mentors that work in there or volunteering there are all graduates from Russell Group universities. So it's a way that, so the volunteers that work in there and the people that have got jobs in there have come straight from Russell Group universities. And when I asked them what the local connection would be, they didn't really anticipate there would be any. I also asked whether there'd be an opportunity for local people to maybe get a job there as well. I'm going to say something really bad now, but they did say this to me. They said that they would advertise for a cleaner. So, and they did say that to me because I was considering that applying. But so that's what I think. What I know the university is doing many different things in the local community, but I think that's more school led, and I think it's individual led. I'm not sure as an institution. Or as an institution of higher education, you know, where we're making inroads.
So are there some schools, Lisa, that are affiliated specifically with Into on this project?
It's just as local schools in St Anne's, yeah, all the primary schools.
Sorry, I meant then schools within the university. I mean,
are they affiliated to this? No.
So does the university have any direct involvement with that, or is it Into?
No, it's Into university. It's almost. I think the university's involvement is the money,
okay, because
they are well funded. I mean, they told me that they are well funded, and I think the point that their goal really is not just Russell Group universities. It's actually Oxford and Cambridge. That's what they said. They are aiming to get students into Oxford and Cambridge. I did ask them who they thought might come to the learning centre, and they said that their parents would have to be committed to it as well. So already I've got lots of worries about this learning centre, because it's not understanding the local community, it's not taking account of the local community and the difficulties that people have in that local community. This is where the learning centre sits in St Anne's, and I'm just showing you this picture just so we can start to understand, you know, the context of where it is. So is it that simple as sort of getting the cleverest kids in the schools to go there, sort them out, and that's it? This was the co-op, that's just closed down as well now. That's been in St Anne's for 70 years, and even though it never made any money, they kept it there just out of community responsibility, really. But it's just closed. And one of the young lads that used to work there was murdered a few weeks ago. And so I suppose this is the context where our children are going to go to this learning centre. So what has this got to do with the global university? Well, I think we need to think about what Coates and Silburn did, because what did that local community have to the relationship to the university at the time? Well, it was just a sense of social justice. It was just that research was focused on making changes in society. And I think that's where, and again, that's what we have to ask what we're doing. So the local, I don't know if to tell you this story or not. It's in my book, so I may as well. Shall I tell you this story? Shall I say it?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know this story?
Well, I don't know until you've told it, have you? But do I?
I don't know whether to tell. I will tell this story actually. This is one of the local groups that I've been working with. It's called Unity Football Club. They were the Guardians Charity of the Year 2 years ago at Christmas. I don't know if any of you know anything about it. It's just a local. What they do is they take young people who are at risk of getting involved in gangs or are part of gangs, and they play football. That's the hook. Football's only the hook. In order to get involved with this group, because kids like football, you have to engage in some sort of education or training for a job. So actually it's 50-50. It's 50 football, 50 training and education. Nottingham Forest supports it, Notts County supports it, and actually it's a great local charity. It's a small charity, but they are losing their funding. And I was working with them for a while, and we came up with this idea. We thought it was a fantastic idea. Morris is the guy that runs it. He's just a local guy from St Anne's that set it up. And we had this great idea that we would, the seniors, because they've got 4 different football teams, and the seniors are age 18 to 24. And we got this great idea that wouldn't it be good if the seniors played a football match with the University of Nottingham's football team. You know, we've got great resources, the lads would have loved to play on the pitch here, and we thought, oh God, this is an amazing idea, this is really great. And also at the same time we could maybe do a tour and show the lads around the university and let them sort of meet different people. And this is where my other interest is how our students interact with the local community. So we thought we'd got this great idea, and we floated it about within the university, and there's quite a few people who say, no, I think this is a really good idea, you know, this could work. And then we took it to the powers that be that sort of run, you know, the people that run the university, and they had a look at it and they said it was too much of a risk, and they'd risk assessed it, and the risk was that these lads might come back when the university wasn't open. So they said no. So we never actually got this off the ground, so that really upset me.
You know, you talking
meaning
about
coming back and nicking things.
They didn't say that. They just they didn't say that. They said that they were worried that they would come back.
It's this idea of risk, though, because I'm in Salford this week, and people from Manchester University have said to me, "Oh, you know, don't go out at night, don't." To the extent that I saw 2 people walking towards Morrison's early in the morning. I thought, "Oh, what's going on here?" And they were just going to work, and I realised I was thinking, "What's happening?" So you begin to get this kind of fear builds up, doesn't it? And that separation from it's such a big gap, you know, and then you make assumptions, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And how do you cross that then, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose that's why really I'm here today, is just to ask you what we're going to, you know, should we do anything about that? You know, is this anything to do? Is this our responsibility? You know, when we have colleagues that are, I mean, I've got a colleague over in sociology that her role as undergraduate, what is it? Admissions tutor. Her role, rather than going to sort of local colleges, is now sort of going over to China. And you know, no one is going. You know, like I said, the guy that came into the college in Baseford, where I was, you know, that's not happening anymore. However, the global is. And I suppose that's what I'm asking really, is what are our responsibilities here? Have we got any, or is this, you know, a weird market? I thought I'd tell you this story just because it made me very upset, actually. They said that they'd risk assessed it. They also said that they were concerned what parents might think.
Parents
of the students.
Grown-up students.
Yeah. So they weren't allowed. So we never got it going. I thought I was going to win an award or something for a great, you know, for a great idea. You know, yeah.
I'm just curious. Did the football team actually have any say in this?
What, this football team?
No, the football team.
No, they didn't. No, I tried to contact the student union and I kept contacting them and saying, "Can I speak to somebody?" And it never got that far. The people that run the what are they called? The outdoor areas.
Estates.
Yes, estates. They just kind of risk assessed it and said no. And the whole point was, I mean, the whole point of this is, well, they wouldn't come back because the whole point is they don't come here and they don't even know it's here. So that was what I thought. You know, I thought it was a great idea. And just on a really miserable note, because it's been a miserable hour, really, I just thought I would just show you another miserable picture of the riots. And the reason I'm showing you this is because the lads that I was involved with for 2 years, 6 of them were arrested, and they're still in prison actually. And because I'd been working with them for a year before the riots, I kind of saw it coming. And we'd had many discussions. My work is ethnographic, so for months and months I sit in barbers' shops and just talk, and sit in gyms and just talk. And for months and months, up until the 9th of August in 2011, we'd been having these big arguments, me and this group of men, about education and about where power lies. And they got their own ideas about power, and I told them that actually, power lies in private education, and private education is bad, and private education is really the enemy. And we were talking about this, and then on the 9th of August they got involved in, they weren't rioting, but they were involved in some sort of protest. They ended up where they are now, which is on top of the school, the Nottingham High School, and they actually messaged me from the roof and said, "Guess where we are?" Yeah, and I was like, "I don't know, where are you?" And they said, "We're on top of that school that you hate." So they're on top of that school. They did set it on fire, but actually they didn't. They didn't go up there for. I was quite not proud, but I kind of thought, oh, are they actually making a political statement? But I actually found out that they wasn't. The police had chased them and they just climbed up the nearest building. The reason that they'd set it on fire is because they started sending the police dogs up. So they thought they'd put a fire there to keep the dogs away. So actually they weren't making any sort of political statement about education at all. They just climbed on the roof. But they did realise that they were up there, and they did let me know that they were. So I just thought I'd show you that. And then, is that the last one? Yeah. And I think just my last point really is, I'm a great believer that what Ken Coates and Bill Silburn did, it had a massive, well, I'm talking about it today, and we do talk about this today. So while we're talking about impact in the university and what the university impact has, I don't think there's a greater impact, a social impact, than what happened 40 years ago on Shakespeare Street. And that's it really. So I'd be happy to sort of...
Thank you, Lisa. That's really thought-provoking, and I'm sure that colleagues will have a lot to say. Lucy.
I have a question about you, and you said that
many people do.
You started off with your access course,
yes,
and it was attractive to you because it led to social work, and that was a very practical outcome of education. And then somehow in between there must have been a shift, because then you were attracted by the University of Nottingham because of this.
Yeah.
And you said there wasn't a social work course. Presumably you were doing. Were you doing sociology as an undergrad here, or?
Yes, yeah, I did sociology and social policy joint honours.
So not something with a very practical outcome. No. So what was it in you which shifted?
And I think that's what is important, I think, here about our connection to local people, and or I suppose our connection to social justice and inequality. What I found is I just loved learning. That was it. I found out that actually I wasn't that interested about the social work stuff. I just loved the education. And when I got into the classroom, at school, when I was at school, I left school at 15. But at school, you couldn't keep me in that classroom. Mm-hmm. But when I went on the access course as an adult, I sat at the front. I used to sit there laughing. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm a swat.
So it
was the education itself. It was the learning.
Okay. So then the sort of the means to earn a living. Did you realise you could do that through an academic route, or did it just cease to become important because the love of learning took over?
Yeah, I thought I could. Well, I still don't know if you can make a living at it.
Yeah, good point.
but no, it was never about making a living. It was always about I just never thought, at each point, I never thought I knew enough.
But originally it had been about making
Of course it had, yeah. Because the only way that I could see the point of sort of giving time up and was to get a benefit, get something back from it. But actually, once I was here, and I think that's what the massive shame is, that we don't have the adult education classes anymore, is because it's the learning. You know, it's the process of being in education. And
I think you've got a slightly rosy view, though, of the latter years of the adult education programme.
Yeah.
There's the latter years of the adult education programme were about teaching white, middle-class, retired female teachers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But then again, I would say, what would be our responsibility to try and get that out there and change that? You know, how did we change that?
And Sarah, I mean, I don't know what exactly the answer to this, but I as I understand it, the class that did this work with Coates and Silver were also white middle class.
Yes, it was.
Yes, that's
teachers,
true, actually. Yes, you're right there.
Retired teachers. So it's just what they did and what that enabled to achieve.
But then surely one issue here is that, or something that's coming out of this for me, is that the whole Into programme, that's where the problem lies, because they're dealing with the gifted and talented under 10-year-olds. Like, you can really say someone is gifted and talented at 10 or under. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to. I'm desperate to get in, but I'm going to let. I'm going to chair it instead.
Thank you. That was really, really interesting and stimulating. And I just want to make a point that we've just finished a project looking at sociology in 4 universities, and I think this students who've come from more disadvantaged background, the first near university working class students do get an awful lot out of university.
Yeah.
But I think in your talk as a whole, there's everything's gone into it, isn't it? There's kind of research about communities like St Anne's, and then there's connecting in different kinds of ways. Then there's giving opportunities for working class people to come to universities, and they all kind of demand different kinds of actions, and so you know, there's a lot that needs to be unpicked, and I'm not sure where, because you were asking us about, you know, where will I fit in.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
I'm not sure. I mean, doing research, if you like, on communities is different from doing, say, access and retention work with people who couldn't do it. So I don't know where your interests lie more.
Well, I suppose the route is always the research on, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of the route. But
for you to be here,
for me to be here, But at the same time, although I've been doing research on, I've also been working with.
Yes.
And I think that's probably the most important part about my role, is rather than sort of just doing the research on, and because I was a community member, I'm still a community member, I've constantly tried to build those threads between in any way that I can, and those connections between the university and between the local community, and I'm still doing that. One of the things that I'm doing, you know, this is small stuff that I'm doing, but this is what I was saying. I think most of the work that we do within our local communities at the university is by just individuals just wanting to, you know, knowing that it's important and they want to do it. And I'm not sure where the institutional support comes in. You know, one of the things that I'm doing is on the 27th, the Saturday night, Sunday morning exhibition at Lakeside. I've kind of talked them into, and they were really open to it, actually. And again, because that's just one small department in the university, they're paying for a bus to pick up people in St Anne's, bring them to the university. Bill's showing his film, and then they're going to be taken around the exhibition, and then they get back on the bus and they're going to be taken back home to St Anne's. Now you probably think, well, why would they need a bus from St Anne's? Because they just wouldn't come here, and they just wouldn't, you know.
There would be 2 buses anyway, wouldn't it? So you're also
but they just wouldn't come here, you know, to see an exhibition at the university. They just wouldn't come.
Well, if the community in St Anne's is an entity, then isn't there a lot of responsibility on that community as well to seek out the university, rather than just all the university responsibility of reaching out to people endlessly and that kind of stuff? If you've got individuals in the St Anne's community, then have them build up stuff from that side as well.
Yeah, which is what I mean. That's what I do there. That's what kind of I do. I try and build up those networks. But when like I said, the interest is not within the local community because it's shifted and it's gone somewhere else. It does tend to be individuals doing this sort of work, and I think that what we need is institutional support to do this sort of work. And whether that is through through research or through different programs, or I'm not a fan of doing things to people. That's why I don't really like the inter-university stuff.
My question is a question because I could say the community and all the challenges and the to bring that community, or to care for the community and to make a university interests local, but in the global economy and crisis, going to China or to Malaysia, is it an interest to have or to educate students in China, or is actually serving the economic needs of the university to carry on the research, and how the balance could be balanced between the global and the local?
Yeah, no, I think that I don't, I'm not sort of saying we should just pull out and not, what I'm saying is that the emphasis has shifted, and I'm not sure, and that's why I suppose I'm asking is there still a room for the local? Is there still space for the local here? I'm not happy that students are paying £9,000 a year to be here, and I'm not happy with what the consequences, the unintended consequences of that will be. But what I'm saying is there, where is our social responsibility when we've got 9,000? If we are paying for, this has become a private organisation or institution. Yes. It's a private institution now. Does that mean that social responsibility or social justice is just, is it gone now?
I presume if it's a global university, there's also that social responsibility in China and in Malaysia for their local.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I mean, like the Ningbo campus, the government demolished half a village to put the campus there.
Yeah.
But with your football team example, I was over in Ningbo for 4 years, and we had the staff football team, and we were inviting loads of local teams on campus, some expat teams, some from universities, and just the local Chinese leagues we could find. So at least on that campus there was some welcoming in.
Yeah, I did that work in China. Just actually, was the local communities, are they part of the Ningbo campus?
No, not really. I mean, we gave lots of people that worked in the village jobs, being gardeners and that kind of thing. They wanted to give scholarships to the kids of those families, but that was stomped down by the government because of the expectation that somehow they'd be entitled to stuff if we take away your village. They didn't want to set a precedent. But there's lots of engagement within the local community to the extent of the youth party infrastructure, doing outreach stuff. So there's charity stuff with local schools and that.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, in Nottingham, there's a bigger disconnect between the actual community and the university than even here.
That's really interesting, isn't it? That we're kind of looking at what's happening over, the University of Nottingham is sort of have moved the campus and their ideas actually somewhere else.
They're a bit different as well, because here you've got a campus university in the middle of a city. Ningbo, you've got a campus university at the edge of a city. In Malaysia, it's about 50k away from Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, well, thank you for the talk. That's very interesting. I don't know if I see it right, but I see it's a two-way street. You said you're interested in what the students think about community.
Yeah.
And you did a lot of work on community, thinking about students.
Yeah.
What can we do more about, maybe find out what students think about community, and maybe their opinion is what will
that's
what motivate institutions.
I suppose that's what I'm quite interested in next, really, is what is, because I've been focused in the local community, is, that's why I'm interested in what this School of Education thinks about, you know, how do we put the focus here now? And I think the students is the way into it. I've started trying to, but again, there's no institutional support. There's a group, there's a film company that's just made a film in St Anne's about childhood and being a child in St Anne's, and actually it's really, I'd like the inter-university to see it, because I think they might understand a little bit what the challenges that they've got. And it's things like children looking after children, and before they go to school having to take their younger brothers and sisters to school, and the difficulties that they've got. And I'm trying to get a group of students from the university to sort of sit and watch it with the young people that made it, and maybe start a debate in society or something. You know, because I really do think it's the interaction.
There are lots of interactions, but what you're talking about, Lisa, I think you're bringing in obviously really powerful additional dimension to do with class.
Yes.
Class issues. Because if I think of all the interactions that I'm aware of, you know, there are Nottingham University students on a daily basis who are going into local schools, primary and secondary, doing voluntary work, then, you know, reading, homework clubs, and masses of that goes on. There's lots of staff involved in things like that. But again, I don't think they're bridging the class dimension that you're talking about with the St Anne's community. Now, I guess Nottingham's tried to do it in Bilborough, with all the preliminary work and the community theatre group that seems to be quite successful in the build-up to the opening of the Nottingham University Samworth Academy. And obviously there was an aspect of that in the rally project from last summer, where, you know, former rally workers were involved in community theatre, etc., etc. But I don't see. I think there's a bigger gap. Is there perhaps between the St Anne's community and some of these other communities?
Yeah. I also I sort of found that as well when I went to the community meeting in Newham, just because again it was just sort of that lack of understanding on both parts. It was just no one was sort of that no one could hear each other. You know, the people that lived in Newham really, and I think this sort of goes back to your point a bit. It's sort of the responsibility of the people who live in those poorer communities, but they have no knowledge. They've got no understanding. It's not, you know, there is no relationship there, so they don't know what the point is, and it's really difficult when you've got. And I think this is where I'm sort of thinking about space and the way that space is sort of closing in.
I suppose you're sorry.
Just to relate to your point as well, there is the academy, the summer academy, Nottingham Academy. There is as well building links with the primary schools like Furbeck Primary School, and is building partnership with the University of Nottingham, and that's actually at the heart of the Bilborough community.
But there's a shared language still in those relationships that perhaps isn't there. It's what you're describing.
Yeah, but I also think as well that we've, you know, you kind of have 2 points in someone's life to make an impact or to make a difference, and sometimes it is when the children, but also when you work in the poorest communities or the most disadvantaged communities, who you get a chance at another point in their life as well. And I found this with the men that I work with. It's usually when they've done enough prison. When they've done enough prison and they can't do any more prison, they want to do something else. Now, if you can't get in at that point, then you've lost them again. And with the women, it's usually after they've had the babies. It's like, right, I want to make it. Like with me, there was a point. Luckily, at that point.
But could I just, one of the phrases not you used, but the inter-university that you repeated from them was something like gifted and talented.
Yes.
And isn't part of the problem that a university like Nottingham, the Russell Group University, will see its mission being dispensed in relation to the gifted and talented, and not in relation to people as a whole.
Yeah.
And that does differ from, and I think it's partly to do with the way in which a university like Nottingham, Russell Group University, has over the last sort of 20 odd years moved from being a as it were, a local regional university to being something which sees itself as global and therefore has to is competing with elites and wanting to get elites from across the world in. So it's only looking to, I mean, obviously there's something in the whole notion of a university which is about, you know, university education, which not everybody can get to.
Yeah.
But there's something about, even amongst people who might be able to study for degrees, we're only really interested in the tip-top people. And so wherever you go to, and particularly I suppose the view would be if you go to St Anne's, we're only going to want a few of them.
Yes.
And what we're going to do is, and you can see it from inter-university, we're going to suck them out.
Yes,
And then we're going to leave St Anne's without them 20 or 30 years
Yes,
down the track.
yeah.
So the same problem will continue to be. Instead of, which I take to be, well, I mean, I'm sorry.
I suppose that's why I was thinking about the unintended consequences. What, because it's not now. Is what happens to our society to our society in 20 or 30 years' time.
Let me just throw in this. There was a very big debate in the 1950s in adult education, in that kind of world you're describing there, between people who saw adult education as provided by universities and so on as being about providing education for, as it were, for everybody, being, and people who saw it as being basically about getting gifted and talented people out of the working class and enabling them to go to university. Yeah. The second group said, well, now we've got these grammar schools. We've got these grammar schools. Clever people can go to grammar schools. We don't need to do this adult education anymore, because adult education is, you know, in the sense of kind of intellectual adult education, it's only needed by the clever people, and we're going to be, you know, that will die out as these cohorts of people go through grammar school. Well, you know, but then the argument against that is, oh, you know, everybody's entitled to education. So I mean, I know this is all very. Sarah will tell me I'm being very rosy-eyed about this, but I mean that's the ethical position, isn't it?
Yeah. And
isn't it just that the English system's so tied up with class education and class in
Yeah.
England? And I mean, having been educated in Scotland, the idea that everyone has an opportunity is so embedded in this. Now, I've probably got a really rosy
I've
view
got
of
a
the
rosy
Scottish
view.
education system.
I've
You
got
know,
a rosy view.
but yeah, probably it is. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. So how do you separate? Isn't this political? Don't you have to separate class and education?
Yeah. Oh yes.
All of this is just icing on the cake.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah. This. I mean, and this is why I think.
How can you do it in a society? You know, or just do a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, because this is absolutely bound up with class.
Because like you were talking about the fact that, you know, people are moving out of one class into another through education.
Well, shall we move over to the other Scot, and then we'll go to Ching.
What you said about the IU people getting pulled out of the community, and 20, 30 years later, the cream of the crop not being part of St Anne's community or whatever. That's individual's choice. The university's not forcing them to move after they do their graduation. So if they don't feel, if those individuals, after going through that transformative process, don't feel a part of a community anymore, that's between them and their community, not between the transformative engine of the university.
That's the hidden injuries of class. That's the hidden injuries of class. That's what I would argue with that. Is that's what happens with. That's because it's not changing any sort of class view or political class intervention. What that's doing is just it's got to go. I'd have to spend. It's that's, as Pierre Bourdieu would say, that's symbolic violence.
To some extent.
We've got Ching next.
But if you follow up.
Not those questions. I was just following that to make a comment.
Please.
No, just saying to some extent, it's not just education issues, social issues, isn't it? Because it's not something you can just resolve in education.
No.
Like this so embedded this ideology and social class divide and all this. So it's
But I suppose again that would give. That's where my argument goes of what happens if we're only choosing particular people to come to university. Then what happens to education in itself? You know, where does that go? You know, who then does this sort of research? Does this type of research, does this go now?
Well, it has.
Right. Actually, I've got one question, one comment.
But I want to ask you the question first because I'm curious about that. So you've been like in terms of your communities, probably you've got an experience of working with different universities. So the interaction between different universities and your community. So just based on your experience, so for example, Nottingham, like UCL, you mentioned they have a very very much focused on globalization. So what about other universities like have more clear focus on the local community? So for example, Nottingham Trent, they offer the access programs, which is more trying to meet the needs of the local people. So do you think that they probably are doing something better than what the branded as globalized university do in terms of the
I mean, I know
content?
Trent's, they take, well, it's not as large an amount of students from the local community as they used to, actually. But I suppose I would think about the public universities argument with that. The very fact that we charge £9,000 means that because we charge £9,000, we've become an elitist institution, and then we've got a hierarchy of universities, and it's just really based on the fee. So then we've got this hierarchy of universities, which we admit, we know we've got that, and the fees, that's just going to exacerbate that. So also you've got a 2-tier education or even a 3-tier, because when I went to the United States, you know, where you've got local colleges, community colleges that offer degrees, and actually that's where poorer students go. They don't actually go to the universities anymore to get a degree. And I think the FE colleges are starting to look into this as well, starting to offer degrees, because we're kind of accepting that the universities are becoming not accessible.
Because of the fee rise.
Yeah, because of the fee rise.
Just following your question, I just want to know if someone from St. Anne's want to do what you have done now, is it like less opportunity for them, or it's the same? Just one.
Do you know, I'd like to say with less opportunity because the £9,000 would be, but actually it's probably the same, because if you don't know about it and you don't know what the benefits are, then it doesn't matter if it's £1,000 or £2,000 or £9,000 or £15,000. Really.
Is that £9,000 is like it's the government policy, or to do with the government?
Yeah, it's changed this year. All our students now at the University of Nottingham, and actually all the Russell Group universities, paying £9,000.
But is that how it is connected to the global university?
I suppose it's about marketising it, and then it gets sold. It's a package then to be sold. So it's students from all over the world. As long as you've got that fee, you can go. And I think, and again, this is where it's sort of bound up in class as well.
And it might be worth thinking about instead of saying global, just saying elite. Because it seems elite universities don't pull from the local communities because they're only interested in the 1% of 1%.
Yeah.
Not because they're rich 1%, but then because they're rich, that knocks on in secondary education.
Yes.
And secondary seems to be where all this talk of university changes and admissions and everything should actually be taking place.
Yeah.
Lucy.
I just wanted to say something which I think brings together the notion of global and local and class quite well. I work on an online course which is also mostly dealing with students who are not in the UK, although most of them, or a lot of them, are British.
Yeah.
But for example, they're working in Thailand or working in Malaysia. And also it's a course, the sort of the tagline is it's a course of professional enrichment for teachers. So it's the PGCEI. It doesn't provide QTS, so they can't come and teach here, but it's nevertheless the theoretical stuff around teacher training. And because of the kind of students that we have, a lot of them actually come in under non-standard entry applications. So they might be people who had the opportunity to go overseas, backpacking or something, ended up teaching in Asia because they didn't need any particular qualifications, and now find themselves loving teaching and wanting to get more educational qualifications on the back of that. I had an application from a student who's from Nottingham, and actually she came from the Aspley estate, and she had been teaching over in Southeast Asia. She has been teaching over in Southeast Asia for nearly 10 years, so she has 10 years experience as a teacher. And when she applied, I had to resubmit her application as a non-standard entry because she doesn't have a degree, but she did have very practical qualifications. She had, for example, an NNEB. So she had done some schooling, but not at degree level. Now her application got turned down. Her NSC application got turned down, even though there were other students with less years teaching experience who got accepted. And this really riled me. I don't know. I was told that her qualifications plus her experience weren't enough to make up the degree level. But nevertheless, there were comparative cases where I felt that that had been the case. And actually, I resubmitted her NSE application under a widening participation remit. And I got in touch with the widening participation office, and I made the case for her being a Nottingham student, coming from the Aspley estate, not having the kind of educational background that would be acceptable to our admissions office or whoever makes the decision. And they wouldn't even look at it. They said, no, she's been turned down once, so we can't resubmit.
I did that for someone as well, actually.
And I just think that is really interesting because she somehow got the opportunity with her background to go overseas and to make a life
but
in the way that she
admissions
wanted.
process is so tight.
And she wants to come back to her local university and get some education and improve her life in that way. And we're not allowing her to, and it's infuriating.
Yeah, I had one. I suppose, you know, I made a comment last week, 2 weeks ago, on David Willits' new stupid comment that we need to treat white working class boys as an ethnic minority, and I'm not, you know, I think it's just we're not dealing with the actual issues here, which is, you know, about sort of class inequality and this elitist, and I think you're right.
Well, I think elitism's good. I mean, I come from outside Glasgow with all the tenements and demolished and stuff, and when I went to high school, it was all a case of non-streaming or anything like that. And me and a couple of other people who were obviously going to get A's were just completely ignored and felt like we spent most of our time idling. And I was only one of them that went to university because they thought, what's the point in actually working, because nobody's paying any attention to us, the work's no charge, we're just going to get a job and do something with our lives.
But I just think the danger with that is it's kind of like the inter-university stuff. One of the things that I said to them, because they were really impressing upon me the importance of family support, that the families would make sure that the children got there, and that the families would make sure that they did the work, because this is not an easy thing. And you know, they kept saying this to me, and I said, well, you're going to really struggle then to get, because there are families here that's not going to be able to offer that support at all. And I said to them, I'm going to be really honest with you, the only families that I know here that could offer that kind of support and would are the families that know and understand the importance of education, and they might be the recent migrants from Africa. And actually they said, well, that's fine, because that's actually ticking the boxes. And I think that's the problem when you start to say, well, if we just focus on that group. And I think that, and I'm, you know, this is a suspicion of mine, but I think that's probably what it's about, really. It's about quota.
Julio, could I just before I let you in, could I ask you also to take responsibility for bringing things to an end in well, whenever it's necessary, because I've got to flip off now for a 2 o'clock meeting. I'll thank you very much. That was really useful.
I was just wondering, you know, isn't there a danger when we try and open up the doors of a university that is only interested in the talented, gifted and talented, to other people who are not? Are we not running the risk of failing them, saying, oh, come and you can be part of this community, but when we realise they're not gifted and talented, to say, sorry, we can't help. And that happened to a lot of universities that embraced the idea of widening participation. And I come from a university in London, where we were the WP university, and one of my sort of complaints about that was that, okay, we are failing students twice. They were failed by the system before, and now we are telling them, come, we are WP, this is your second chance. But then when they failed, and it was their responsibility.
No, this happens on access course all the time. I mean, the figures of people that actually do the access course and complete it and then go on to university is quite shocking. But there's some research. Do you know that Diane Ray's research that she did? Or she did. Because actually, I was going to talk about that, but then I didn't bother. Diane Ray's research. She actually looked at mature students and sort of going through access course and why students actually don't complete the access course. And again, it was all social issues, and it was about not being supported. So it wasn't really about them failing. It was about the course or the system failing them. Because for me to get here, I had 3 jobs and doing an undergraduate degree and a family at home as well. And so you are juggling this, and it is really difficult, and you've got to be a very sort of single-minded person to be able to do this, but also you've got to have, I suppose, a sympathetic institution, like you with your student, a sympathetic institution which says, well, actually, and I think now we're moving towards AAB with admissions, that the sympathetic institution is just gone, because the student that got ABB and they did their own work on the floor, when the student that got AAB and did their own work, in a note panel,
That doesn't mean that over panel students any less worldly. That's the problem. They're stuck in their own little situation as well. But if we've got a system of universities, then surely we don't need every university to care about everyone.
Well, I think we do, because I think that higher education and education is a public good. You see, that's what I think.
For the university system as a whole.
Yeah, but I think that I think it's a public good. I think that I think it's like healthcare. It's a public good.
If you have universities that are interested in only the gifted and talented, you can't mix the two.
No,
because then you don't have institutional structures in place that would support these students. I mean, and as you said, WP is all about support and providing the possibility for students to actually, perform and deliver.
But again, they're only interested. I mean, WP is really interested in
money. But that's why it's failing students twice, basically, because all they were interested, or the ones I know, were interested in the money.
And they are concerned about failing students twice. I know this because one of the reasons he was a potential student. He wanted to come here, and he's fantastic with computers. He can put them together, and he's actually been in prison for years, which is where he learned to do this. And he went and did the access course, and he did everything that he was supposed to do, and it was a massive thing for him. And they told him on the college course that he was at not to apply here, and it was better that he just went to Derby.
And this is another case I know is students in computer science applying for international baccalaureate from Nottingham, applying for Leicester University and Lancaster University and Nottingham University, surprisingly applying for Leicester University and Lancaster University for the undergraduate science, computer science. But what the University of Nottingham is asking for a minimum of 32 for the foundation course. And the other two universities asking 32 for the main course, not the foundation. So he got acceptance for the two universities for 32 in the main course. Surprisingly, the University of Nottingham accepting him for 34 for the foundation course.
Yes.
You say is a local
Yeah.
and is gifted
Yeah.
and still rejected from the university in a way, not in a direct way, but when you ask for 34
Yeah.
for foundation, and Lancaster University asking for 32
Yeah.
for the main course, that's raising another question.
And you know, and poorer students who live in local communities who want to go to the local university because resources only allow that.
Yes.
And again, that's just sort of taking that, it's sort of limiting their resources even further.
And as well, the parents, when the centre is established for the gifted and talented children, and then those parents who are interested in the education of their own children, this raises a question not only about that centre but about the local schools, how the children who are, their parents are not interested in education could be actually in disadvantage in many cases where the parents are not aware of their own rights as parents, or in the cases to support their own child, and then becomes the child and the parent is vulnerable compared to the school as the power or, or the teacher and the authority, and that's raised as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know this is, you know, I know what I've done today sort of raise a massive issue and say we've got to sort everything out, which is not what I think, but without sort of throwing it at you in that way, you know, I don't know what else to do. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how else to sort of, you know, we need to, I think, as academics and as probably people that have got an interest in social justice, I think we have to sort of, we have to do it this way, and we have to say, you know, there will be unintended consequences, and we don't know what they are, but we know that from history that, you know, it didn't work last time. You started to remove social goods and public goods away from people, and it's probably not going to work again.
And here's, for myself, being educated in a socialist system in Algeria, where education is, you don't know in your school who's the rich and who's the poor. Everybody's in the same school, everybody's going to the same route, everybody's going to the university, free education, and then you have the grants for everybody, and so education is there theoretically.
Yes, theoretically,
but practically, then the decline of the university after a while because of the resources, and as well the baccalaureate when you go through, again, it's the gifted and talented children who are through a very competitive, only small amount of people who can go to university. So theoretically, everybody is open, but practically, only those who are very interested in education are going through the system.
But also, I think that, you know, the gifted and talented argument is a false argument, because the gifted and talented, I mean, we all have students here.
Not everyone here is gifted.
No, exactly. You know, some are just I've got lots of resources holding them off.
That's what I mean.
But the children from poorer neighbourhoods have got to be gifted and talented. Where the students from more privileged families, they just have to be. They have to have more resources. And I just think that for the old gifted and talented argument is.
And I'm using here because in that system, people are not, the schools not providing, not different schools are they're providing similar things. So basically, those who are gifted in arts, for instance, they will fail because you have to be successful in maths and science and physics.
I'm afraid we have to close. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
You just raised two difficult questions.
That's
not something we
well, I've actually
important.
We should have started with the questions, actually.
Yeah, well, I've actually had UCL like tweeting me, so I need to shut up. Because I tweeted earlier about UCL, and then not happy. Well.
Right. Thank you, Lisa.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I love it sometimes. I know. I can't believe John has disappeared. I want to see it.
He's got a meeting, I think.
What time is it? Do you know what? Do you know
He's got meeting 2 to 3 and maybe something I can't
after? Have you got something after as well?
I'm not 100% sure.
Need to see John.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we will. Yeah, okay. Let's do it.
Well, I'm glad I've done that.
Thank you very much.
No,
it was
thanks.
very interesting. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't sure how to do it really. You know, it's difficult because it's a long time to think. Yeah.
I mean, that was good.
And you know, you don't want to bore people.